The Galactic soldier was laughing when he slapped the boy. It wasn't a hard hit by his standards, just a casual backhand from one of his four-jointed arms, but it snapped the boy's head to the side and sent him stumbling into his father's knee. The sound carried through the half-lit bar like a dropped tool on steel. The father's right hand moved with a suddenness that didn't match the unhurried rhythm of his voice. The motion was almost lazy, but it ended with his palm cupped around the soldier's head, half helmet, half bone. And then, there was a sharp, wet sound, like a ripe melon bursting under pressure. The soldier's eyes went wide for a fraction of a second before they rolled back, his body sagging under its own weight as a thick, dark liquid, the color of crude oil, erupted from the crushed bone and metal. It wasn't a clean kill. It was a statement. The father let the body drop with no ceremony, wiping his hand on his trousers as if he'd just handled something sticky in the kitchen. No one breathed. The sound of the alien's lifeblood pattering against the floor was uncomfortably loud in the silence. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Cosmic Conquerors channel. Before we start, I hope you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so that you receive all the new content, and also share the story with your friends so it reaches as many people as possible. And if you have a story, write it in the comments. Maybe we'll choose one to narrate in the next video. Let's start the story. Pay attention, because there's a small detail that might change your entire perspective and awareness of life. The air in the bar was thick enough to chew, smelling of fried algae and that cheap, synthetic hops that makes you wonder if you'll go blind. In the corner, a fan groaned, probably hadn't been oiled since the last Galactic cycle. The father, a lean, broad-shouldered guy in the plain clothes of a spacer, just rested one steady hand on his son's shoulder. The kid's cheek was already turning a nasty shade of crimson, but his eyes, man, they weren't full of fear. They were locked on the soldier, and that grinning, silver-blue armored freak was loving it. This wasn't just any soldier. He was Velarigard, a real piece of work. 7 feet tall if you count the bony crest on his head, and draped with a polished sigil that screamed, "I'm a big shot, and you're not." These guys saw themselves as decorated veterans, but to everyone else, they were just bullies with bigger guns. The soldier's voice boomed across the bar, something about teaching primitive mammals some respect. A couple of patrons chuckled nervously. You know the laugh, the one you do when you're terrified and hoping the big guy doesn't notice you next. But the father, he didn't even look at the soldier. Not yet. He bent his knees to get eye level with his son, his face as calm as if they were back home, fixing a leaky faucet. "You good?" he asked, his voice a low rumble, the kind that doesn't believe in panic. The boy nodded, but his jaw was clenched tight. Only then did the father stand up, turning to the Valari with the slow, deliberate motion of a man who's been in 100 situations like this and is frankly a little bored by it. His eyes were steady, no anger, just measuring. "I'm guessing you thought that was funny," he said, his tone so polite it was almost insulting. He had this faint, flat Midwestern accent, the kind that makes you think of cornfields and hidden missile silos. Back home, we've got a saying. You don't lay a hand on another man's kid unless you're ready to bury your own. The soldier let out this ugly metallic laugh. "Is that a threat, human?" "It's a proverb," the father replied, his eyes flicking to the sigil on the soldier's neck. "We like those." The tension in the room became a physical thing, crawling up your spine. A Rin merchant in the corner froze with a piece of fried kelp halfway to his mouth. The bartender, a wiry insectoid, was probably already calculating the repair costs. This was going to get messy. The soldier sneered, "You're in Valari territory, ape. We own this station, this bar, and everything that breathes in it." The father's smile didn't change. "Ownership's a funny word." And that's when it happened. The lazy, almost casual motion that ended with the wet crunch. He just wiped his hand, bent down to his son, and said softly, "Finish your drink. We'll be heading out." The boy, bless his heart, just swallowed, nodded, and picked up his root beer with 2 shaky hands. From the back, a crystalline lumen diplomat, his voice like wind chimes, finally spoke. "And they tell us humans are a peaceful people." The father slung a satchel over his shoulder, his eyes sweeping the room once. Not a warning, just counting. What do you think he was counting? The exits? The enemies? Or maybe, the allies? The soldiers' buddies were shifting, unsure whether to avenge their friend or just let this terrifying human walk away. "Are we in trouble?" the boy asked quietly as they reached the door. The father looked down, a smile that never touched his eyes. Not yet. They stepped into the corridor, their shadows long and sharp. Behind them, boots hit the floor. 3, maybe 4 sets. The father didn't turn around. His right hand, the one that had just turned a Valari's skull into a slushie, flexed once. The boy's small fingers curled into his dad's left hand, and they just kept walking. Down the hall, the heavy doors of station security clanged open. And everyone knew this wasn't just a bar fight. It was the first move in a game nobody had a name for yet. Station security rolled in like a storm in a bottle, a mix of species, all business, their movements so rehearsed it was almost a dance. 6 sets of eyes, weapons held low but ready. The air smelled of metal polish and ozone from their stun lances. They formed a living cage around the father, but he didn't resist. His son's hand was still in his, a small, steady anchor in a sea of trouble. The lead officer, a chitin-plated insectoid whose mandibles clicked when he talked, said, "You'll come with us. There will be questions." The father's tone was almost friendly. "Of course. I'd be disappointed if there weren't." 2 guards gently peeled the boy away, guiding him toward a caretaker unit. The boy looked back once, and his father gave him a calm nod, an unspoken promise that everything was going according to plan. What plan, right? What kind of plan starts with your dad pulping an alien soldier in a dive bar? They led him to an interrogation room that was basically a steel box with bad lighting. He sat down like he was settling into his favorite armchair. The security chief, the same insectoid from before, sat opposite him, fidgeting with a datapad. "You killed a decorated Valari guard in cold blood," the chief said, his voice as dry as dust. "That's an execution offense in this jurisdiction." The father tilted his head, as if considering it. "Decorated for what?" The chief hesitated for just a second too long. The father smiled faintly. "Where I come from, decorations mean you've done something admirable. Not everyone defines that the same way." "Your presence here is unusual," the chief pressed, ignoring the bait. "No registered cargo, no clear employer." "Family trip," the father said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "Thought the boy should see the galaxy before he gets too tall to think I know everything." "Interesting choice of bar for a family outing." "Bars are where you learn the truth about a place," he replied. "Diplomats polish words. Working people just spit them out." The chief's mandibles clicked. Annoyance? Or was he thinking? "You speak as if you've been here before." "I've been a lot of places." He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto the chief. "Question is, have you been to mine?" It wasn't quite a threat, but it hung in the air like the smell of gasoline. Meanwhile, in the caretaker lounge, the boy was a picture of innocence. He was sipping a nutrient drink and patiently explaining the game of baseball to a soft-skinned aven with pale blue feathers. He used bottle caps for players and snack wrappers for bases. "My father taught me to keep my eye on the ball, not the pitcher," he said, "because the pitcher will try to trick you." The aven thought it was a charming little metaphor. He didn't notice the boy's eyes constantly flicking to the security staff, tracking their movements, counting their steps. Back in the box, the chief played his next card. "The Valari guard is demanding custody. We may have to comply." The father nodded, almost cheerful. "You'll find choices are rarely as narrow as they look." "Are you threatening the station?" the chief snapped, his claw tapping the table. "Threatening?" The father's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "No. I'm reminding you that the ripples from one stone thrown in the wrong pond can drown things you didn't even know could swim." The chief just stared, trying to figure out if he was looking at prey or something much, much worse. Elsewhere, station officers were talking. A crystalline lumen noted that humans were latecomers to the galactic scene, but had an insane survival rate in hostile places. A scaled Dren trader shared an old rumor about human soldiers who once camped inside a predator's den for days, just to learn its patterns before killing it in its sleep. Urban legend, maybe. But it was enough to make them whisper. The father asked for water. When a guard brought it, he thanked him by name, having picked it up earlier. The guard stiffened, freaked out by the small detail. As he drank, the father started talking about rivers back home, How the ice breaking upstream could change everything in a second. "If you're standing in the wrong spot when it happens," he said, "you're gone before you even feel wet." "You speak in riddles," the chief grumbled. "I speak in warnings." The interrogation dragged on. The chief, getting desperate, tried a new angle. "You could avoid execution. Admit it was an accident. Agree to leave Valari space forever." The father's expression was flat. "Accidents are when milk spills. This was intention." "Why?" "Because he touched my son." The bluntness of it shut the chief up for a second. The father filled the silence with a tiny, cold smile. "And because sometimes, the first move decides the whole game." The chief's lower limbs twitched under the table, a dead giveaway of his stress, a tell he probably didn't know humans could read so easily. "You think you've made the first move here?" "I know I have." While this little chess match was happening, the boy was still in the caretaker lounge, now describing a double play with his hands, catching and throwing invisible balls. "You've got to be quick," he told the fascinated Avon, "and you've got to know what's coming before it comes." He kept glancing at the wall clock, at the guard's comms unit. "Just a kid, right?" Later, as they escorted the father to a holding cell, one of the guards asked, "Why didn't you fight?" The father glanced back, his tone light and breezy. "Why do you assume I haven't started?" The boy asked to use the washroom. On his way, he walked past a comms panel, his fingers brushing the edge as if by accident. A tiny green light flickered on and stayed lit. When he got back, the Avon asked if his dad was going to be in trouble. The boy gave a small, precise smile. "Only if they're very lucky." They threw the father into a windowless cell. He paused just long enough to lock eyes with the security camera, a look of intense focus, like a pilot memorizing a star chart. The door clanged shut. He sat on the bench, exhaled slowly, and settled in. It was the posture of a man who knows his trap is about to spring. As a Lumen diplomat was saying to the station commander in the command tier, "You don't cage a human without first understanding why they let themselves be caged." In the lounge, the boy started tapping his fingers on the armrest. 3 short taps, 2 long, 3 short again. SOS. To the Avon, it was nothing. But somewhere deep in the station's maintenance ducts, a tiny relay flickered to life, passing the signal along. Word of the killing was spreading like wildfire. By the time the story reached the upper decks, it had become a legend. He'd used a hidden weapon. He'd ripped the soldier's head clean off. But the one part that never changed was the cold, hard fact. It was deliberate. The Valari arrived in force, their commander, a female with a nasty scar across her crest, demanding they hand the human over for a public execution. But the station commander hesitated. Something felt off. In the cell, the security chief returned. "The Valari will be here within the hour. Prepare your final words." The father nodded. "That's considerate. I've got one request." "This is not a negotiation," the chief bristled. "I'm not negotiating," the father said calmly. "I just want a meal with my son." Why would he grant that? What possible reason could there be to agree to such a ridiculous request? The chief stared, confused, but the father's next words hit him like a physical blow. "Because the last thing you want," he said, his voice dropping low, "is to have him remember that you kept us apart." The request was granted. In a glass-walled room, father and son sat across from each other, guards posted everywhere. As the father handed his son a piece of bread, the boy recounted his trip to the station market, a story that sounded innocent to the guards. But to his father, it was a detailed intelligence report. 3 guards here, 2 drones there, a vent opening near the upper gantry. "They feed you well?" the father asked. "Could use more salt," the boy replied. A coded message. "Things are ready, but we need the final piece." The father's mouth twitched. "We'll fix that soon enough." The docking bay was a theater of tension. The Valari commander stood, proud and furious, her soldiers in perfect formation around the lone, unbound human. The father seemed completely at ease, like he was waiting for a bus. His son was nowhere to be seen. "You'll board now," the commander declared, gesturing to her massive flagship. "Your trial will be before the Valari High Court." Her words hung in the air, but the father's gaze shifted upward, to the gantry. Nothing was there, but the emptiness was loud. "I've been on trial before," he said, his voice flat. "Funny thing, those courts never quite outlast the people they try." "You think you'll leave that ship alive?" "I know I won't be leaving alone." A flicker of doubt crossed the faces of the Valari soldiers. This wasn't going by the book. "You are nothing here, human," the commander snarled. "Alone. Surrounded." "That's what you see," he replied, a strange calm in his voice. "I see friends in the walls. In the vents. On your ship." Before she could laugh, the entire station's background hum deepened. The lights flickered. It was a subtle shift, but every spacer knew that feeling, the breath before the plunge. "You thought I was here by accident," the father's voice cut through the charged silence. "But we don't do anything by accident." With a deafening crackle, the docking bay's main blast doors slammed shut. From hidden panels all around them, figures emerged, human men and women in plain spacer clothes, armed with improvised, deadly-looking gear. They moved like ghosts, slipping between the stunned Valari guards. Across the bay, the boy appeared, standing beside a woman in civilian leathers. He held a small device in his palm. "High ground, Dad," he called out, his voice clear and steady. The father gave a brief, sharp smile. In one fluid motion, he disarmed the nearest soldier, spun, and fired the weapon at a security camera overhead. It wasn't about destruction. It was a signal. The bay erupted in chaos, not gunfire, but blinding strobes and concussive pulses that sent the Valari formations into disarray. Through the chaos, the father moved like a shark through water, closing the distance to the commander. She drew a wicked-looking serrated blade, but he didn't even flinch. He sidestepped her lunge, grabbed her wrist with an iron grip, and twisted, sending the blade clattering to the floor. His other hand came up and pressed a small, flat disc to her chest plate. A light on it blinked red, then turned a steady green. "Insurance," he said. Behind them, the boy and his escort were at the docking clamp controls, their fingers flying across the panel. With a groan of protesting metal, the magnetic anchors holding the Valari flagship released. The massive ship drifted, just enough to disrupt its internal systems. And through maintenance corridors and airlocks, more humans were boarding, a silent, surgical team. They weren't killing, they were neutralizing. Command crew secured, communications cut, weapons locked. The flagship was theirs in minutes. The commander watched, breathing heavily, her face a mask of disbelief. "You can't hold this ship," she spat. "Don't need to," the father said. "We just needed you here." Without backup. From the flagship's windows, a series of coded flashes confirmed the takeover. The father released her wrist, but the device on her chest remained. "Here's your choice," he said, his voice too low for anyone else to hear. "You go home and tell your people that the humans you think you understand aren't worth provoking. Or you stay, and my friends on your ship start making examples." She looked at her disarmed soldiers, at the calm, efficient humans surrounding them. There had been no pointless brutality, just absolute control. "You're predators," she whispered, a strange new respect in her voice. He didn't smile. "No. Predators hunt for hunger. We hunt for survival. And we don't lose." With a nod, the humans began to melt back into the walls. The boy jogged to his father's side. "Time to go. Time to go." As they walked past the frozen commander, the docking bay lights returned to normal, the station's hum smoothing out. It was as if nothing had ever happened. In the corridor, the boy looked up. "They'll come after us again, won't they?" The father's voice was low and certain. "Only if they forget what tonight felt like." They moved on without looking back, their unhurried footsteps echoing down the hall, leaving the scent of controlled violence hanging in the air behind them. And with that, we have reached the end of the story, but stories don't end here. If you like the story, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you receive all the new content. And if you have an opinion or something that caught your attention, leave a comment and let's discuss together. I'm waiting for your opinions, and see you in the next story. Bye.